Hi guys, it's Belados here. This is my quick walkthrough tutorial on how to take models from Blender into Substance Painter and through to GameGuru. This should be two videos, the first being a quick modelling session. I'm not going in depth on the modelling, just a quick overview of basic modelling, mainly to create a model which will be my equivalent of graphics hammer, which he's used for his workflow. I will then quickly UV unwrap and show you how to prepare your model to be placed into Substance Painter for painting. The second video will be taking that model into Substance Painter, preparing Substance Painter to generate the correct channels needed for GameGuru, and setting up a preset export set so that you don't have to keep setting it up every time you want to export the right textures for GameGuru. Okay, so let's start with Blender. Okay, this is the default starting screen in Blender. As you can see, you've got your default cube in the center, you've got a camera, you've got a light. First things that I'm going to do is I'm going to hit my N button and scroll all the way down and start display. That's my screencast. If you look down in this corner here, you can see what keys I'm pressing. So if I press the left mouse button, it displays the left mouse button. If I press the right mouse button, it shows the right mouse button. If I press the G, it will tell you that I've moved the G, and so on. Okay, first things first, we don't need the camera, nor do we need the light source. So what I've done is I've right-clicked the camera and shift right-clicked the light source, and now pressing delete and clicking the delete. We don't need that for now. We're not working with lights or cameras. This is a very simple, basic model. Okay, now starting with the cube, we're actually going to use the cube. It's not often you get to use the cube from the default, but we are going to use the cube. We're going to press Tab to go into edit mode. I'm going to switch it over to face selection, or I could press Control and Shift and Tab and choose face, vertex, edge, etc. from that. My apologies, that is actually wrong. It's Control Tab, vertex, edge, face. Control Shift Tab is your snap elements. Okay. So what were the sizes graphics had? He wanted his was 10 by 10 by 20. Right, so if we use the scaling option, which is the S button, that was the wrong button. Let's go back. Oops, I'm hitting all sorts of buttons here. Right, okay, we're going right back. Okay, we've got everything highlighted. To highlight and deselect everything, you can press the A to deselect, you can press the A again to highlight everything. To highlight individual faces or vertexes, you right click the face, etc. Okay, so we want to press A twice to highlight everything. And now we want to scale. Now what I want to do is I want to make it 20 across this direction and 10 in all the other directions. So what I will do is I will scale. I know this box is 2 by 2, so I will scale by 5. So I press S, 5, and then press the enter button. I'll then press S, and then I'll now want to scale it on the x-axis. So I'll constrain it to the x-axis by pressing the X button. Right. And now it's at 10 units, so I want it at 20, so I'll hit the 2 button and press enter. And there we go. As you can see, I'm using my middle mouse button there to scroll round to rotate the object. Now what was next? Now graphics had his edges, short edges, beveled. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to the line mode, the edge mode, sorry. So it's Control Tab, Edge. I'm going to right click first edge, then shift right click, rotate it round, shift right click, rotate it round, shift right click. So I've got all 4 of them edges selected. I can now then press Control and B and then drag the mouse to bevel it. And that looks about right to me. And there we have the head of the hammer. It's as simple as that. Now what I will do is sorry, I went into object mode by accident there. What I will do is I will now go back into to face mode, and I will select this face on the top by pressing Control and Shift and S. It brings up the snap menu. This is for the cursor, which is this little 3D widget cursor here that you can see. This is where all of your objects come into the scene when you create them. So if I press Shift and S and then cursor to selected, you see the cursor has moved to that face that I've selected, which means I can now press Shift and A and create a cylinder. Now first things first, on that cylinder I'm going to change the cap fill type to nothing, so there's no ends to it. I'm just going to zoom in there. By pressing the Shift and the middle mouse button, I can then pan and zoom in. Now what I want is the radius. I think it's the radius. I will set that to 2.5, so it's a bit bigger. Now pressing A to clear my selection, I will change to edge mode. Now I want to select this whole loop around here. This whole loop of edges all the way around the edge. I want to select these. Now what I do to do that is I hold down the Alt button and then I hover over one of the edges and click the right mouse button. I've now selected that whole loop. Right. Now I know that this cylinder is 2 units high. I want it 26 if I remember right. So I need to move it up 24. The translate tool, the move tool, is the G key. Press the G key and you can move it. If you press the Z key, you can then constrain it to the Z axis, X to the X axis, and Y to the Y axis. We want to constrain it to the Z axis, and we want to move it up exactly 24 units. So we then type 2, 4, and then press enter. That is now 26 units high. Right. I now want to create another area above it that's 2 units high. We use the extrude tool for that. So with these edges still selected, we press the E button. Note we now have an extra geometry on the top. We constrain that to the Z and then press 2 and enter. We now have our extra piece of geometry on the top. Now what we want to do is we want to fill this area. We want to fill it in such a way that we don't create an n-gon. So with the Alt key held down, we press the F button. This fills it, as you can see, in the best way it can for the type of geometry. It tries to keep it as flat geometry so that it doesn't cause any warping due to n-gons. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to turn this into a cap. So what we need to do is we need to select all of these faces around here. So we go back into face mode. Right. We hover the mouse between 2 faces, we press the Alt button and then the right mouse button, and that has selected all of the faces in that loop. Now what we want to do is we want to extrude them out. So we press the E button, but notice it automatically constrains to one angle, which is wrong, which we don't need, which is not what we need. So you press the right mouse button to get out of that. We've now created extra geometry. These faces are now doubled up. So if we press the S button, and scale it, as you can see, it creates the extra geometry we need. But as you can see, it's moving on all axes. We don't want it to scale on the Z-axis. So to do that, we exclude the axis by pressing Shift and Z, and that gives us a nice flat. Oops. Do that again. Extrusion, and there we go. We have the cap for the hammer. Okay, there's now one more item that we need to make for this. We'll go into front view by pressing 1 on the number pad, and we're going to put it into orthographic view so that we can see it flat by pressing the 5 on the numpad. So what we need to do now is we need to find the center of this circle. Easiest way to do that is in face mode, press the C button, and it gives you the circle select. Just scroll in and out to increase the size and select. There we go. All of them pieces in the middle there. Right click to come out of that. That's now set in the center of that. We now press the Shift S, cursor to selected. Right. At this point, we need to add a new object. Now, we're making the strap that goes on the top. So what we want is a strap that comes round like this. Best way to do that in Blender, Shift A, select torus. That creates like a donut. Now, it creates a lot of geometry. There's a lot of faces on that. We don't need that many faces. It's going to be quite a flat object. So what we will do is scroll down here. Let's bring this out a little bit so we can see it a bit better. Down here, whenever you create an item, its properties, until you move or rotate it or scale it, you can change its properties in here. So as you can see, major segments, as you can see, if I change that to 12, that's your major segments there. Minor segments, the ones around the ring, around the actual thickness of the torus. If we drop that down to say 3, we now get a nice little 3-sided ring. I think that should be enough. I'm going to give it a few more major segments. I'm going to give it 24, so we can keep the shape a bit. Okay, so now what we want to do, we need to change its angle. So what we need to do is we need to rotate it on the x-axis. We do that by pressing, with everything selected, pressing the R button. As you can see, that moves all over the place. So what we want to do is constrain it to the x-axis by pressing X, at which point it will only rotate around the x-axis. Let's undo that. Press R, X. Now we want it upright like that, so that will be 90 degrees. So we type in 90 and press enter. As you can see, we now have it in roughly the position we want it. So what we need to do now is we need to make it bigger, and by doing that we press the S button and we pull it out to about there, maybe about there. Okay, so and then what we do is we can use this widget to move it up just a tad. Now what I think I might do is press Alt and S, and then just tighten it in. What that does, ooh, nearly. There we go, and left click to hold it in, and then just scale it up a little bit more. What Alt S does is it scales around, instead of scaling on the Z, X and Y axis, it scales around the actual geometry So you can scale strange shapes like this and make them less thick. Okay, now what we want to do, we've got quite a bit of extra geometry hidden there underneath the cap. So what we can do is we can press the Z key, which puts us into wireframe mode, and we'll close that. Now what I'm going to do is, first things first, I'm going to hide this. So if I hover over any of these dots and press L, that will select the whole of that, and press the H button to hide it. Right, I'm now going to select, by box selecting, these four face loops. So press B and then click, drag. They're now all highlighted all the way through. I can now go X and delete faces. That deletes the extra geometry. Now if I press Alt H, that brings back the cylinder, and then press Z to take it back out. We've now got our model. There we go. Now I've got some N-gons here on the hammerhead. As you probably noticed, you can see there's an N-gon there and again underneath. Sometimes game engines, they just don't like N-gons. They try to fold them and bend them, and you get all sorts of weird distortions. So we need to try and keep our geometry to quads or tris, preferably quads, but tris will do it a push. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go into vertex select mode, which is Control Tab, select vertex, and I'm going to select this vertex here with the right mouse button, shift and select the vertex on this side with the right mouse button, and then press J, and that joins that up. And then what I will do is each side I'll do exactly the same until I've got no more N-gons. And this should be the last one. Click that one and that one, and we got the model. This is the model. There we go, all done. Now what I need to do is I need to unwrap the UVs. It's no good without a UVs. Substance Painter won't know where to paint. So what we need to do now is come down to this little widget here and drag across to create a new window. We'll close these two menus here by pressing T and N, and then in this little box here, select it and choose UV Image Editor. Now what we want to do, first things first, what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch back into Face Select, select that with the L key, and select that with the L key, and hide them, because I only want to work on this bit for now. Right, I'm going to close this menu by pressing N, and just drag that in a little bit. Right, okay. So what I want to do is I want to unwrap this so that when it's displayed on the UVs, it's like a cardboard box has been folded out. One piece, but expanded, exploded. So what we need to do there is select, edge, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to select that one, select that one, select that one, 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 and then all of these except that back one, and that should theoretically give me a nice little fold out box. Let's see how it works. We now press the Control and the E button and we choose Mark Seam. That now highlights, that now highlights them seams as red. That now denotes that they are seams and they will be used to explode the UVs onto the UV map. And let's see how we've done. We select it all with the A button, we press the U button, and then we press unwrap. Look at that. beautiful. Probably one of the best unwraps I've done in a long time. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to take that and I'm going to move that out of the way because I want to work on the others. Back in the 3D window, Alt-H to bring everything back. Oh, excuse me, I've still got a bit of a chest infection. What I want to do now is I will select that leg edge there, and then what I'll do is zoom in. I'll press Shift, Alt, and click on that edge there, and that will give me a nice little seam around there. So when I press Control and E and mark seam, I get the red lines. I can then go into face mode, press L to select that, press U and U again. It gives me a perfect little unwrap. So we're halfway through unwrapping the model already. See how easy it is? Now with this one, let's see, let's go into edge mode again, and we will select that ring there with Control and right click, and we'll select that one there with Shift, Control and right click, and then we'll, with Shift and right click, just select that one. Control E, mark seam. Right, so now if we go back to face select, you notice when we press the L button, it'll only highlight that area. If we press the L button again round there, and then on there, it will highlight all of that. Now let's press U and unwrap, and look at that, another perfect UV. And we'll just move that off to the side out of the way. Right, now this is going to be a little bit trickier because it's not going to come out perfectly straight, but it doesn't really need to. Substance paint is really good for bad geometry in UVs. So if we just Alt right click that loop there and E, mark seam. So now when we go into face mode, press L and then press U and unwrap, and it's not a brilliant unwrap, but it's okay, it will do the job. Okay, so now let's sort this UV out and lay it out a bit. So we'll select everything on here so we can see everything in here, and as you can see, it's all nicely laid out there. So what we want to do is hover over this area, press L to select the whole object, press G to move it, and what I will do is I will scale that by 2 for now, and then see how it goes. What I want to do, if I can, is try to get all this in a nice little square. Easier said than done. So yes, that will do, that will do. We'll take this and we will rotate it by pressing the R button and 90, and then G to move it, and we'll move it over there. Right, we'll then press L to select this loop, G to move it, and we'll move it over there. So I'm just going to move that a bit further over this way. Right, and then we've got these 2 pieces here. So press L, G, move that in there, L, G, move that in there, and then we press A to clear, A for everything, and we line that up over the grid as such, and then using S we scale it down until it fits inside the grid, and then G to move it and position it, and there we go. That is all laid out nicely, one UV laid out. Job done. Okay, before we go any further, I'm going to do a quick save because I can't believe I've just done all that without saving. So I'm going to create a folder on my desktop called tutorial, which I've already got there, Thor's hammer, and we'll call it hammer save blender file. I can't believe I've just gone that long without saving. I've usually messed it up by now. Okay, now what we need to do is we need to prepare it to actually go into Substance Painter. So the way we do this, what we want to do is we need to set it up so that each of these different areas is a different material. Now, we can't use the normal material tab from Blender to do this, because in Substance Painter it treats every material as a completely separate object. So what will end up happening is if you have an object with 5 materials, you'll get 5 sets of textures, which you don't want. We want a single atlas texture. So the way we're going to do this, excuse me, I need to cough. The way we're going to do this is we're going to create one single texture for the whole thing, and then we're going to create an ID color mask. So by default, this has actually got one color, one material already on it, which is great. So what we need to do now is to make the color mask. So we go into edit mode, right? We select the area for the first material. Now I'm going to have that as one material. I'm also going to have this cap as the same material as the hammer, just to make it a little bit easier. So what I want to do is press L, L, and L again. Right. Now if I press Q, Control and I, that will reverse the selection, and then press H to hide that, and then A to select everything. I now then go down to this little drop down menu just down here that says edit mode, click it, and we choose Vertex Paint. Oh, and hiding that did nothing. Great. Okay, I didn't need to hide that in the end. Right, this is where we paint the colours for our ID mask. Very simple. All you do is we chose the hammerhead and the cap, so what I want to do is I'll leave that there. We'll create a new palette by clicking new. Right, the blend type will be mix, which means we'll be painting directly onto the object, and I'm going to make this a grey colour, a dark grey colour for now. So we take that down. Now what I do now, whenever I choose a colour on here, because I've made this mistake before, whenever I choose a colour, I always press the plus button. This saves that colour here, so whenever you want to paint another part the same colour, you can just click on there and choose that colour again. The amount of times I've started colouring something else and thought, oh, I missed a bit. I can't remember what the colour is. So that you just save that there. Okay, so now all you do is you press the F button and then pull the mouse out, big as you can, and paint. Oops. Now, as you can see, that's painted everything. I don't want everything painted. The reason I selected only the faces for the cap was because I only wanted them selected. What have I forgotten? I've forgotten this little button here. This is face selection masking for painting. If you click this, there you go. You've only got your selected faces. So when you paint, you only paint the selected faces. There we go, my mistake. See, we're all human, we all make mistakes. There we go, and then underneath, paint everything. Just make sure you've got everything on there. Right, we can now press the tab button to go back into edit mode. Press Alt-H to unhide it. Now what I want to do is select this area here, press Control-I and hide. Right, so now we select everything on there and we go back into Vertex Paint. We press the plus, we change the brush. I'll give this a sort of browny sort of colour. Dark brown sort of colour. Press the plus, remember to save your palette, and then paint, and just spin round and paint. Just paint everything, make sure it's all nice and well painted, and press tab to go back into the edit mode, Alt H to unhide everything. One last thing, the strap, so we'll press L to highlight that, Control I to select everything except that, and H to hide it, and then A to select everything, and we can then go back into Vertex mode. And here we'll change the colour. What colour should we have this? We'll make it a yellow. Give it a yellow colour for now. What you need to try to do, and save that, what you need to try to do when you're doing this, try to get the colours as different as possible. Try not to create too many colours that are similar shades, because Substance Painter can get confused. Right, there we go, that's done. We go back into edit mode and bring back all the geometry. Now if we go down to here, we click that and we change, click that and we change it to textured mode. You've got your colours. Now if we go into globe or into object mode, you can see we've got our basic colours. I can put some fake ambient occlusion on that by pressing N and going into this one and clicking ambient occlusion. Let's give it a higher, and that'll give you some fake ambient occlusion. It does look like I've missed a few vertices there. I have missed a few. So if I go back into edit and I select this one right there, I can then go back into Vertex Paint and we can choose the grey. See, that's why I saved it, and repaint across there. I knew I saved it for a reason. And just make sure we got everything. Now if we go back into object mode, as you can see, there we go. Right. Now one more thing I want to do before taking it into Substance Painter, which will be the next video, is to give it smooth shading. So what we need to do is we need to highlight the object. I'm going to take it out of textured mode and put it back into solid mode, because as you can see in solid mode you can see the faces are not smooth shaded. So if you come over to the menu to the left, there's a shading option. Press smooth. There we go. It's smooth shaded. Unfortunately, that does cause a bit of geometry issues here. So what we now do is we'll go over to this menu over on the right hand side. We'll click the little spanner and click add modifier, and what we want to find is in the generate list an edge split. Right. What this does is it's set at split angle 30. Any edge that is an angle greater than 30 degrees will be split so that it's a sharp edge. Any angle that is under 30 degrees will remain smooth. Right, and then we just click apply to make sure that's applied. All done. Just save that quickly. And then what we want to do, so that we can use it in Substance Painter, make sure it is highlighted by right clicking it in object mode. Make sure it's in object mode. Click File, Export, FBX. Substance Painter does import .x, but I found occasionally, not very often, with more complicated geometry objects, occasionally you'll come across the odd face or two that it won't paint. For some reason you just cannot paint on it. I've no idea why. It might be something I'm doing wrong, but that's what happens every now and then on the more complicated geometry. So I tend to use the FBX export just for painting, because the UVs and the textures will be the same for the .x as it is for the .fbx as it is for a .obj. It doesn't change. So I tend to use .fbx because that's the more stable and easier to work with in Substance Painter. So I'm already in Thor's Hammer folder. It's already written up there, hammer.fbx. I don't need to change anything except for one option on here, And if you look down here, you'll see a little tick box there, selected objects. Make sure you tick that, otherwise it tries to add all the cameras, all the lighting, everything else to the model, which although won't mess anything up, it's just extra information you don't need in the model. And then we click the export FBX, and there we go. Just quickly save it and close it down. And if we look in tutorials, Thor's hammer, oops, that's because I'm running Bandicam. Bandicam seems to, we have our two files there and there. Okay, that's it for this one. I've quickly shown you how to model the hammer, how to UV unwrap it efficiently, and how to paint the vertexes different colours to use as an ID colour mask when you bring it into Substance Painter. In the next video, I'll be taking that model into Substance Painter, setting up all the texture channels, quickly painting it, and then showing you how to create your own texture export preset, so you don't have to keep setting it up every time, specifically for GameGuru. Thanks for watching. I hope I didn't waffle too much and you understood all of that, and I'll see you in the next video.